Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago, one of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose, as long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your host, Sean, and before we start, I want to give a shout-out to our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. After a tough loss on the road to the Chicago Wolves, the Ice Hogs will be back at home at the BMO Saturday, December 6th, taking on Grand Rapids. And it's a special night, so everybody make sure you bring a brand new stuffed animal or teddy bear to the game. After the Ice Hogs score their first goal, you can throw it out on the ice, and all the teddy bears collected will be brought to a local hospital to give to the kids for Christmas. So come out for a good cause. Get tickets now, icehogs.com. So with that out of the way, I don't even know how to sum up my emotions. I wanted to take a couple days after that Bears loss to the Lions and just really reflect. What I said in the previous episode was that I really thought that the Bears had an opportunity to turn the season around, and after 2 consecutive wins, they looked like they started to do things on the right path. They were getting pressure on the quarterback, they were moving the ball as an offense, and I knew it was a really, really difficult road, but if they could win those last 5 games, which were theoretically all winnable games, that they could have a shot at the playoffs. I know they don't have a good enough team to be able to win in the playoffs. That was never, I'm not delusional, but anything can happen. And there's been teams that looked awful going into the playoffs and have won the Super Bowl. Cough, the New York Giants, cough. So anything's possible, just catching fire at the right moment. And my whole premise hinged on the fact that the Detroit Lions have been notorious for choking at the second half of the season. And that's why I kept saying that it was good that the Bears had to play them twice going into the final part of the season, because if they're gonna choke themselves, then you really only have to win 3 games. And then one is against the Minnesota Vikings, you've already beat. One is against the Cowboys, who are a really tough team, but they're going to be coming at home, and it is a winnable game, and they got blown out as well on Thanksgiving Day. And then you have the New Orleans Saints, who are not the same Saints that you've seen the last few years. They're a team that's just really struggling, and even though they're in first place in the division, they're like 3 games below 500. So if you could beat the Lions, or the Lions could beat themselves, this could really be a season. And it started out exactly that way. The Bears were up 14-3 going into the second quarter. So what happened in the next 3 quarters that they ended up getting blown out? I'm going to start with the offensive line. The offensive line as a whole was terrible. Kyle Long looked very good. If you watch him, his one-on-one matchups, he was doing really well against Ndamukong Suh, which is a really tough matchup for anybody. And last year he got beat like a rented mule by Suh, but this year he really tuned him up and did really well against him. But the rest of the line, part of it was just getting beat man on man. Part of it was poor communication. And I understand offensive lines, in order to be really good, have to gel. That's just the nature of offensive lines, because they have to communicate. They have to know where the other person's going to be. They have to have some sort of understanding of what each other's going to do. And that's the only way you get that is through playing games together. And if you have a team that's rotating offensive line and changing up who's in the rotation and getting injuries and those types of things, then you're just not going to have that continuity that you should have. And last year, the Bears, even though they weren't the best offensive line and they did still have weaknesses, like Jordan Mills, the offensive line played together the whole year, all to themselves. The whole season, there was the same 5 guys all season long. This season, it's just been a rotation and rotation. I mean, I think everybody's been hurt at some point. Slauson's out for the year. Garza was out for a while. Mills was out for a while. Bushrod was out for a while. I'm having a memory lapse. I can't remember if Kyle Long was out or not. But you get the point. And you've had a lot of backups playing in there. And the backups, Brian De La Puente has played well in roles, but Michael Ola, he's had spots where he's looked really good, and then he's had spots where he shows that why he wasn't drafted in the NFL, and he had to play in the CFL for a while, and today was one of those games. If you watch, I went back and watched every play at least twice, and looking at the offensive line, there was a few times where there was matchup where they just got beat. Jordan Mills got beat on 1 sack. Jermon Bushrod got beat. But a lot of the other times, it was poor communication. There was the one where after Jay Cutler threw a 23-yard pass to Martellus Bennett. Martellus Bennett, had the nice run after the catch, and it was called back on a holding. That next play that really put them in a hole, that was a miscommunication. You had Garza and Michael Ola were not communicating, and the defensive tackle did a stunt, came around, and the next thing you know is Jay Cutler's on his back. And then the offensive line is that they're not performing well. I mean, the best they've been able to do is pass blocking, and they haven't been able to run block that well. So the game plan was completely altered. And I know Matt Forte was completely frustrated with the lack of rushing attempts that they had in the game. But I sort of understand why Trestman had the game plan that he did. Is they didn't think that they could, with this offensive line, with how banged up they are, with the people that they have in there at the moment, the personnel that they have, didn't think that they would be able to establish a running game using traditional running, like blasts to the 2-4 holes, or anything like that. They weren't going to establish a traditional type running game like the you would see from Baltimore or Kansas City or Pittsburgh. So instead, they were going to use the short passing as an extension of the running game, and I fully agree with that. That's a perfectly great thing to do. I mean, Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots, that's like their MO. They've done that for years, is use the short passing as an extension of the running game, and it works really well. But the problem is that that's all you do and you don't vary it up and you don't stretch the defense is ready for it, and they take that away too. The whole purpose of using swing passes and misdirections as part of your running game, it's to tire the defensive line out, because the offensive line knows exactly where it's going. The defense is the one that has to react. They're going to be tired. They're going to, at the end of the game, and eventually you hope to be able to wear them down to do more traditional things and to be able to set up your full offense. But the trick with that is you have to be successful and be able to pick up 6-7 yards a clip and consistently get first downs. If they're getting you 3 and outs or you're having penalties, you are in trouble. So case in point is I got an email from a reader in Berwyn, and so he wants to know why that the Bears were doing the swing passes and the short passes, and why it was successful on the first drive or the first quarter, but not any other time. Well, looking back at the plays and looking back and watching the games and watching the plays again, what happens is, at first, I don't think that the Lions were ready for that type of play calling. Those are the types of runs you do on third down. Those are the types of runs you do when you don't want to throw a pass and you're a little bit of a hole, like 3rd and 12 or 3rd and 15, to try to either catch them off guard or to just pick up a few extra yards to make the punt a little better. But the Bears are consistently doing it on first down, second down. And so it caught the Lions a little bit off guard. But once the Lions realized what they were doing, it shifted the gameplay, and they really stopped the Bears. Bears are only getting like 3 yards a play. And when that happens, is you have to consistently get those plays. You can't lose out on anything, and you definitely can't get any penalties, because once you do, you really stop the momentum of your offense. And the other thing with it is you want to use that as an extension of your running game. You don't want to use that as your sole offensive play calling and your whole offensive scheme for that game. That's just bad offense, because your defense can bring down guys. They're not worried about going deep. They can play press coverage because they only have to. Their defense is going to be able to get to the quarterback, so they're not going to have to cover the guy very long, and they're going to bring their safety down because they know he's probably just going to help wrapping up a guy on a short swing pass or on a misdirection. So what you need to do if you're the offense is use the success in the beginning with that, and then set up the short passes. As I said last week, is the Bears out Lovie Smith, and this week the Lions out Mark Trestman, because they did what the Bears should have done. The Lions were in a similar type situation, as the Bears' defensive line has been able to get pressure on quarterbacks for the most part, other than Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady. But for the most part, they've been able to get pressure to the quarterback. And so they knew that their offensive line is performing really badly, and they don't want to get eaten up by Jared Allen, and they don't want to get eaten up by any of the Bears' defensive linemen. So they set up intermediate passes, these 6-yard passes, 7-yard passes. That's what they did, and the Bears had just a terrible defensive scheme. We'll get to that in a minute, but that's the type of plays that you need to do. You need to have it set up where you're not just throwing swing passes. You're using that like a running game, and then you're throwing those. You're having somebody go deep to at least take the defensive players and spread the field a little bit. Make that safety go back. Don't let both safeties be up in the box. So at least give yourself an opportunity. If you watched on some of the plays, is the only option the Bears had was the little swing pass to Matt Forte. The wide receivers they all go out and then they stop and like a 5-yard pattern. It was like a 5-yard and just stop and wait. So they had a guy blanketing him the whole way because that's just an easy route to cover. You and I can cover that. And so if Matt Forte doesn't catch the ball and make a great play, then really it's done for. It's a done play. And that's the whole thing, is you're supposed to catch somebody off guard with that. You're not gonna use trickery like that and just keep sustaining successful drives. So I'm not sure what Mark Trestman was thinking when that was his entire game plan. He should have used that to open up holes and on the intermediate passes and get the tight end involved, get your slot receiver involved, and then work your way up to opening up your two big receivers in Jeffrey and Marshall. The Lions' defensive backs aren't very good. You should be able to exploit them and be able to work them as long as you can maintain your presence in your pocket, which they didn't. So Jay Cutler didn't have a very good game, and I can't fully fault him because the whole scheme they were running was crap, and they were getting pressure right up the gut, right around the side. I mean, he was under pressure the entire time. There was times he didn't even have a chance to get a swing pass off to Matt Forte. He had to throw the ball away. Like at the end of the game when they were down by their own end zone, he had to just throw the ball to the ground because there was no way to make a play. That's just inconceivable. That's just bad offensive play calling. It was just the ultimate word to describe it was predictable. The Lions knew exactly what was coming, just as everybody else does, and it's easy to stop an offense when they know what's coming. I don't understand why they're not able to take a scheme, establish it, and then expand on it, because that's really what you need to do. I get you don't want to try to run up the gut against the Detroit Lions defense. You've had no success against lesser defenses. So against the number one defense, you're not going to be able to do it. But at least get this going, get the defense spread out a little bit, and then work them a little deeper. Max protect if you need to. If you're going to put in max protect, bring in an extra offensive lineman, that's fine. Do that. Because if the Lions don't have a good defensive backfield, so if you're able to keep the protection and keep your quarterback on his feet, you let your two big receivers work and beat their guys. Throw jump balls to Alshon Jeffrey. Throw jump balls to Brandon Marshall. They can only cover receiver for like 5 seconds, 5 to 7 seconds. I believe I read that's, if anything longer than that, is just phenomenal coverage, and the Lions can't do that. So put max protect in, do a 7-step drop. Let the offensive plays evolve and work those wide receivers. Let them earn those paychecks. Instead, they just wanted to keep doing the short pass, and they were penalties cost them, and not being able to break a tackle, and the fact that they were just really predictable. So that was just extremely frustrating. Let's take a look at some of my other notes here. Also with how this short passing works is they basically have a hot receiver, and that's the go-to guy. If that guy's covered, or he has nowhere to go, or it's a throw that he can't make because of guys in the middle or pressure, there's no time or ability to look at a second receiver, and that's another failure on this offensive scheme. You're not able to overcome any penalties, and you're not able to look at second receivers. That just makes your offense one-dimensional and really predictable. So that's the offense. Matt Forte, again, anytime he touched the ball, looked really good. And again, Brandon Marshall had a few drops. Martellus Bennett had a few drops. They're just showing signs that they're frustrated with this offensive scheme. Switching over to the defense, because special teams, there was really nothing to talk about with special teams. But the defense, again, it was, pardon my French, piss poor defensive scheming. When you have a young offense or an inexperienced offense or a struggling offense, the way the Bears are playing it, where they're blitzing in and then having a zone defense in the defensive backfield, those things will work because you're relying on the quarterback and the wide receiver not having a good rapport, or the quarterback making a mistake and throwing the ball wrong. Those things work then. But when you have professional quarterbacks and outstanding wide receiver, those things fall apart, aka Green Bay, New England, and even with Megatron and the Detroit Lions, is you have a rapport with the quarterback and the wide receiver. And in this case, it was two wide receivers, Golden Tate and Calvin Johnson. So anytime you were able to get pressure, they were throwing the ball away so quickly. They knew exactly where those soft spots on the zone would be, and the ball was right on target. You just beat the Bears every time. And a lot of times it looked like Kyle Fuller was getting beat badly by Calvin Johnson. But if you watch the defensive scheme, when he was lined up on him one-on-one, his job was to take away the sideline and force everything inside. And it seemed like they were supposed to bring in help and let the help take the inside. So he was giving him the inside turn and keeping him tight on the sideline, where you're going to have a hard time getting help. And that's fine. Sometimes you want to do that when you have a really fast, really tall, big receiver like Calvin Johnson. I mean, normally they would put a guy like Peanut Tillman on him, Peanut Tillman's a bigger guy himself, and he's able to physically and match up with Calvin Johnson better. Kyle Fuller's a great cornerback, even though he's playing through injuries and struggling a little bit just because of the injuries that are mounting. But he's a really good wide receiver. The issue is that physically he's not that big or tall. So he's at a really big matchup problem with Calvin Johnson. Now, if you break it down on paper, that's not a bad scheme, is to take away the outside with tight coverage of the cornerback and then force everything inside to bring safety or other cornerback help. The problem is that help never came. There was no help there. So you have a giant wide receiver who's all pro, one of the best wide receivers in football, and you're feeding him accurate throws after accurate throw when he's open in the middle of the field. You can't do that. You were getting pressure up the middle and around the ends from Willie Young and Jared Allen, but the problem is that these passes were coming off so fast. And when you were bringing blitzes, they were the least creative blitzes I've ever seen in my life. They lined their guy up where he was going to blitz, either the A gap or the B gap, and so either over the center's shoulder, so between the center and the guard, or between the guard and the tackle, and they just lined up their guy, and that he was either going to blitz or he was going to drop back into coverage. And who cares if he drives back into coverage? That's the quarterback's job, is to read where he's going to go. And if he blitzes, the offensive line knows where he's going to be blitzing from, and they're going to pick it up. So basically, when the Bears blitz with those linebacker blitzes, all they have is they're taking a guy out of coverage and plugging up the middle a little more, so you can't beat a guy with an inside move because you're just clogging the middle. It's just infuriatingly frustrating. What's the point? I mean, if you want to bring blitzes, but bring them exotic. Don't let them know where it's coming from. Fake a blitz from one side, send somebody else in. Bring a corner blitz. Do something. You have to do something more exotic so you confuse this offensive line. This offensive line is an inexperienced offensive line, hasn't worked together that much, and isn't working that well at all. They've got injuries. They've got backups in. They've got two crappy tackles at right and left tackle, and you're not able to exploit that with the blitzes. I mean, look at the New England Patriots. They have a struggling offensive line as well. I mean, you're not able to take advantage of that. You need to be able to take advantage and get those blitzes home. I can't remember the last time I saw a blitz that just was really effective and they got to the quarterback for the Chicago Bears. So that's really frustrating. And this zone defense is really frustrating because the whole thing with the zone is you need to be able to get the pressure on the quarterback, and they're not able to do that. And when they do have coverages, the guys aren't in good position. There was the one pass where it went right down to the goal line, and it was Kyle Fuller and Brock Vereen that were making the tackle. But nobody really had that man. The wide receiver that came over, he was basically in between where, because Kyle Fuller was on a man that was on the outside, so there was no help to that side. So from his perspective, I sort of see, hey, look, I don't have anybody on the outside. If he turns outside, he's wide open. At least if I cheat his side, the guy that's towards the inside of the field, I have my safety over the top that can help him. And the safety saying the same thing, or saying, I've got two guys, one guy over here, one guy over here that I have to keep up. So when the pass goes to the receiver, the second one in from the left side, Kyle Fuller's got a late break on it because he's got a man towards the sideline, and Brock Vereen's got a man on his left side, and it's just they both get there late, and it's a really good throw. If it was a throw that was any more off, it's getting incomplete or intercepted, but that didn't happen. And when you have a really good quarterback, you're going to get accurate throws. That's why you need to keep him with his feet dancing by pushing the pocket back or forcing him to roll out and throw on the go, where you alter the throw just enough to be able to break it up or not put enough cannon on it to get it there in a timely fashion and lets you recover from being late. That's what happens when you get a pass rush. The other thing that the Lions are doing, and other teams are doing to the Bears as well, is they're exploiting their zone by sending guys out and forcing them to push the zone deep and then dumping off underneath. And all you have to do is just be patient with the Bears, and you can just work down the field. Work with those underneath passes and pick up 7-8 yards a clip and move the ball. It keeps the defense getting tired, and it keeps their offense off the field. So the offense, even if they're able to get in a rhythm, it gets them out of rhythm, forces them off. So it's just really frustrating. I don't know where they go from here. So you have I'm chalking this loss up to Mark Trestman and Mel Tucker, because there was guys out there that I'm really shocked after some of the lopsided losses the Bears have had, and after some of the locker room breakdowns. I'm really shocked that this team hasn't given up. You see guys hustling hard and playing hard, but every time is these coaches are letting them down. So I normally don't side with the players when they have these breakdowns and quit on the team, because they're getting paid a lot of money to do this. So I don't understand quitting. But in this case, their coaching staff is just letting them down game after game and setting them up for failure. That's a really shitty thing to do, and you don't want to see that. You don't want to see that. And so if this team quits on them, I'm not surprised. And then you've got Lance Briggs, who gets hurt, and they put him on injured reserve. So with his contract ending at the end of the season, there's absolutely no way that the Bears re-sign him. He's done as far as the Bears are concerned. So he played his last game as a Chicago Bear a couple of weeks ago. So moving forward, what do you have? You lose another veteran leader who, granted, probably wasn't doing much leading this year, but at least a veteran linebacker. And then I don't see the Bears. The Bears are so cheap. I don't see them cutting ties with Mark Trestman and moving on, because they still owe him 2 years on this contract. The best I can see them doing is changing offense and defensive coordinators, maybe special teams coordinator. The issue with that is, who wants to come in and be a defensive or offensive coordinator under a coach that you know is on the hot seat? They're going to ask for a several-year contract, at least a 3-year contract. And are you going to pony up for that? Because if you clean house and hire a new head coach, you're going to fire your coordinators too. So you're going to be paying 3 sets of coordinators. The one you fired is still under contract. The one you brought in and gave a 3-year contract to, and then also the new one. So you're going to be paying 3 coordinators, and I don't see the Bears doing that, even though they're flush with money. So the best thing I can think that they do is fire Mel Tucker, and they fire the offensive coordinator, and they promote. They promote Kavanaugh from quarterback coach to offensive coordinator. At least he's done that job in the NFL. He's been an offensive coordinator in this league. And then you promote Paul Pasqualoni, or the defensive line coach, to be the defensive coordinator. And he's been a defensive coordinator in this league. So that's something you could do and still keep the guys under contract. But basically that tells me, if they do that they're not in the long term with Mark Trestman, and that he's not long, and he's on a very short leash. I mean, the other thing is you're going to have some names out there as coordinators, and you can give a guy a 3-year contract and guarantee him. Then that gives more security to Mark Trestman, because you're saying, hey, listen, we're going to give you another coordinator, and we're going to give you another shot here. I don't know if they do that. So that's about it for this game. I don't know what they do going forward. They've got another Thursday game this upcoming week against the Dallas Cowboys. And Dallas is fighting for their playoff lives. Right now they're in the last wild card spot. And they really, after they took a trouncing by the Philadelphia Eagles in a game that the winner was going to be the leader in the division, I don't see them slacking and coming in and laying down for the Chicago Bears. This is going to be a game that they really want to win. So look for them to just pound the ball with Murray right up the middle, and look for them to go deep with Des Bryant. And if the Bears don't game plan and really take away that wide receiver option and put pressure on Tony Romo, it's going to be another blowout game. So that's going to be it for the Chicago Bears. Now let's move on to the Blackhawks, who just came off an amazing circus trip where they started off, if the playoffs had ended when they started that circus trip, they wouldn't have been in the playoffs. To now they're right up there fighting for the division title. They went in and they won 5 of 6 games on that long West Coast trip, capping it off with a 4-1 win over the Stanley Cup champion Los Angeles Kings. And that was a really hard-fought game, and that was one I think emotionally and mentally they needed, because it capped off a really long road trip, and it's a team that basically took your Stanley Cup from you. I think everyone, even I think the New York Ranger fans will admit that whoever won that battle of the Blackhawks versus the LA Kings in the conference final was going to go on and win the Stanley Cup. And it ended up going into 7 games, and not just 7 games, it went into overtime in the 7th game. And so it came down to whoever scores next goal wins the series. And that ended up, unfortunately, being the Los Angeles Kings. And they went on to pretty much dominate the New York Rangers and win the Stanley Cup. And that was really hard to take for the Blackhawks, because they knew that there was 2 best teams in the NHL last year, and it was 1 and a 1A, and that was the Kings and the Blackhawks, and that should have been the Stanley Cup final, and it wasn't, and it should have been the Blackhawks Stanley Cup, and it wasn't. So to go on the home ice of the Stanley Cup champions and just dominate them like they did was really great to see, and you could see the frustrations mounting with the Los Angeles Kings, and it ultimately showed up at the end of the game where McNabb took a run at Dan Carcillo, and Dan Carcillo is, as much as I was not happy about them bringing him back, Carcillo has played really well, and he dropped his gloves and kicked the crap out of McNabb and laid him out. That's some of the toughness that the Blackhawks need, and he's also the offensive spark. He's not afraid to shoot the ball. He's not afraid to be aggressive on offense, and he's not afraid of physical play. And right now, that's what the Blackhawks need. His line has been playing well, and the amazing line that's for the Blackhawks has been that second line with Brad Richards, Patrick Kane, and Chris Versteeg. I was so pissed that the Blackhawks kept Versteeg and weren't able to trade him, but I was wrong. They have been a much better team with Versteeg having a whole offseason to practice rather than recover from an injury, and he looked really good. He's been really great on that second line, and that second line has been on fire. So even without Patrick Sharp, where he's on a long-term injury, you're able to still maintain this offensive spark and even improve what you've been doing. Corey Crawford, this was his 14th straight game in goal, and that's really mind-boggling, because you do have a backup goalie in Nancy Ranta, and you've got some good goal play down in Rockford, but the Blackhawks are just choosing to ride the hot hand, and Crawford has looked great. He's shown no signs of bad play at all. Penalty kill has been phenomenal. Other than that one game where they gave up two back-to-back goals, the penalty kill has been just phenomenal. They just shutting teams down. And part of it's been physical play, part of it's been smart play, good passing, maintaining your position, good shot blocking. They've just been on a roll. Joakim Nordstrom, they brought him up to play center and some forward, and he's been a physical presence. He's been chalking up a number of hits. I think they said he had 18 in four game stretch before the Kings game. And that's great. I mean, you need him to play some physical play. Like I said, Carcillo has been a spark that they needed, and the Blackhawks are really, really in stride in the perfect time, because I know myself and a lot of other people weren't worried per se, but they were starting to become a little more watchsome of what was happening, because you can't You can't keep struggling and losing tight games and losing games that you should win and make the playoffs. And like I said before, is the Blackhawks, you don't want to wind up at the end of the season really pressing in order to make sure you get into the playoffs and only get in by a game or two, because you exhaust too much energy doing that. Now the Blackhawks are giving themselves a little bit of cushion, playing well, coming back home to start after the Circus Trip is over, they're going to be having more games at home and hopefully to chalk up some more wins and keep building that padding. So if they do go through another tough stretch, they can still overcome it and make the playoffs. So if you're not watching the Blackhawks, you're not doing yourself a favor. Make sure you go out there and watch them. Check them out. They've been playing so great lately. And this is really championship level hockey. They're completely dominating teams, and this is what we want to see, and this is what they need to see, especially considering the young players they have. They brought in a young player in Trevor Van Riemsdyk to play defenseman on that third pairing, and he went out for a long-term injury with a patella fracture. And what do? They bring up another young guy, and they've got Adam Clendening, who's playing very well. He's a much more offensive-minded defenseman, but he's been playing very well. Roosevelt has been playing well, and they've been rotating those three with him, with Roosevelt, Clendening, and David Rundblad, and they've been rotating those three in and getting some decent play. Of course, when they put Rundblad in, they don't give him too many shifts. He's usually getting about 6 or 7 minutes a game rather than 13, 14 that a Roosevelt will get, or a 17, 18 or more that TVR was getting. So definitely check out the Blackhawks. They've been worth watching. As for the Bulls, I don't want to talk too much about them because they haven't been showing much. They've been a little frustrating. They too were on that circus trip, and it's been a much different result than the Blackhawks. After that first game on the circus trip where they went to Los Angeles and just decimated the Clippers, they ended up 2-4 after that going into today's game. So 2-4 in those next 6 games. It's not good. Like, many of them were really winnable games. It's just that they didn't go out and play well. And you've had the circus around Derrick Rose, and are you really injured? What are you doing? One game he says he's going to be out for a while. The next game he's just in, or he just plays a half. You don't know what you're going to get, and you've got Taj Gibson nursing a ankle injury, and you've got Noah injured. This team can't rebound still. They're just really struggling. They're struggling on defense, which is a really weird thing to hear from a team that's coached by Tom Thibodeau, is to have defensive lapses, and that's really what they've had. Defensive lapses. They're giving the other teams too many second chance opportunities, and themselves they're not getting the rebounds and giving themselves second opportunities, and you're missing out on shots. So the Blackhawks have just been really cold, and I'm not going to talk about them too much because with the Thanksgiving holiday, and I've got a newborn baby, 6 weeks old, so and the Blackhawks have been on almost every night. So I've been flipping back and forth with the Bulls and DVRing the games to go back and watch. So I haven't gone back to watch them in depth to really discuss more than what I'm seeing for 2-minute stretches here, 2-minute stretches there. So I'm not gonna go any further with that. I'm gonna try to have on the guys from Bow. They'll be proud to hear that, the way I said it correctly. But the guys from Bow on, and then we can discuss Bulls a little more. Maybe have Gary on and discuss the Bulls. And the last thing I want to talk about is just really quick talk baseball. There's really nothing much with baseball. This is the hot stove time. This is just the beginnings of hot stove. So you don't have too much activity. The winter meetings are where you're going to see more and more bigger name guys start signing. So the White Sox have had much more movement with the Cubs. We already talked about Zach Duke signing, which I think was a good signing, even though they need another left-handed pitcher like they need a hole in their head. But they got rid of Ronald Belisario, who might have been the worst bullpen man ever. And if you're a White Sox fan, you can just chalk it up to that this was a terrible guy and they got rid of him. And then they signed infielder Tony Campana, which is a nice signing. And then they've also contacted the Oakland A's about what it would take to trade for Jeff Samardzija, which is really interesting because you're basically just going to get the 1-year rental for Samardzija. And are you going to keep him? I wonder if their thoughts are that he made a home for himself in Chicago for a long time, and he's a good pitcher, and you fit well in his rotation, so maybe they're going to try to steal that hometown thing of the Chicago Cubs by bringing him in. So if you basically trade for him, bring him in the house, and then you trade for him, you bring him in-house, and then you've got basically a year to negotiate a contract extension with him. That's a thought, because then you hope he says, well, I played for you guys for this year. I've got a rapport with the teammates. I already know I love the city because I spent a long time here. And so you kind of steal the Cubs hometown discount type thing. That's an interesting thought. I don't know. After Oakland way overpaid to get him, I don't know if I see them giving him up for without much return, and I don't know what the White Sox are willing to give up to get him. So I think at this point it's just lip service and just kind of feeling the waters and seeing what the temperature is. But it would be an interesting thing. Unless the Tony Campana signing was that you're going to trade one of your infield prospects and you're going to trade that to Oakland as part of a package deal to get Jeff Samardzija, and then you're going to use Campana to replace that. I don't know. I mean, maybe that's the ticket, but we shall see. Right now, it's just a rumor and inquiries and something in the far off distance. The Cubs, the big news is Pedro Strup's car accident. He's from the Dominican, and in the Dominican he was involved in a fairly severe car accident, and luckily he wasn't hurt. So when the news broke about it, is especially after the Oscar Tavares incident where he ended up unfortunately passing away, you have Pedro Strop, who's an integral part to the Chicago Cubs, involved in it, and you're just hearing news reports. And because it's not in America, we're not getting full-on CNN coverage and ESPN coverage and all these things with men on the scene. You're getting reports here and reports there that you don't exactly know what's happening. And luckily, it turns out he's okay. I believe he just got a couple of stitches, and he's going to be fine. But that's really worrisome to see so many guys start to get into car accidents in their home countries. And it's really something that teams need to start taking control of and making sure that everybody's staying sober and hiring drivers and taking cabs and being careful what they do in the off season. The other big news and note is, per David Kaplan, is that the Cubs have put in a huge bid for John Lester, something to the tune of $135 million, and willing to go towards 6 years. And the numbers aren't too far off of what I predicted that the Cubs would sign him for. But I don't know if that's going to be enough. So he clearly hasn't signed yet. I'm thinking he's going to wait to see what the Cardinals offer, wait to see what the Dodgers offer, wait to see what the Boston Red Sox offer, and it's pretty clear with players today that it's a huge chunk of it is who's going to sign them to the biggest contract, and that's going to have to be the Cubs if they want him. Which leads us to Travis Wood. Is right now the Cubs have as a rotation Jake Arrieta, Kyle Hendricks, and Tayoshi Wada. And Travis Wood, they have him under control for 2 more years. But the thing is they have to decide if, coming off of his worst season ever, is he somebody that they want? Do they want to keep him? I mean, they've got him under control. I think what they're going to do is stretch it out for a little bit longer, see where things go with John Lester. Because if they bring in John Lester, they're going to go all in for probably another mid-level guy like a Jason Hamill or somebody like that. And I think that what they're going to do then is let him go. But if they're not able to bring in Lester, I think they're going to definitely want to bring back Travis Wood, because he's definitely a guy that's showed that he can pitch in this league. Since he's come in. Last year he had easily the worst year of his career, so he's got something to prove, and I think he knows what he needs to work on, and I think that's definitely something he's going to be doing this off season, and Jed and Theo have said as much, that they know exactly what he needs to work on. So going into the off season, are they going to give up on him? Are they going to pass him up? And he's a fairly inexpensive option as a pitcher, probably going to cost you around $5 million this year, with the hopes of getting somebody else, or are they going to ride a guy that they know and hope that he bounces back from a bad year? I honestly think they're going to bring him back and at least give him another shot at being able to win that 4th or 5th starter spot, because right now you don't have arms that are coming up. You don't have a huge pool of pitching that's at the major league ready level like you do hitters. But he's still a guy that you don't know what's going to happen, because he did have a crappy year last year. And with the Cubs, I know that we all sort of questioned them when they clearly needed pitching help, and in drafts they were just going after hitter after hitter after hitter, especially in the last draft where they took a guy like Kyle Schwarber, who really doesn't have a major league position yet. He's probably going to be maybe a catcher, maybe a corner outfielder, but they got a guy who could clearly hit the ball. And reading a report from a unnamed National League general manager, he was saying, listen, everybody's got some arms in they're in the house. They don't have bats in house. Batting is becoming a premium, and you have the Cubs, and they picked Schwarber, and they're in on some international guys that can hit the ball like nobody's business, and they've got all this minor leagues full of hitters, and they said that's not a coincidence. The Cubs saw the developing market ahead of time and were proactive, and now they're going to be able to trade some of those bats for pitching. Now, whether they do that right this offseason or they wait till they are in the middle of a playoff hunt and they're going to get some guys at the trade deadline, but that's what they're going to do. Is they've got too many cooks and not enough spots in the kitchen, and they're going to use those guys as trade bait. And that's going to wrap it up for this episode. I'm going to put this out as a spoiler. Sometime in an episode before Christmas, I'm going to do a giveaway of a brick from Old Comiskey Park. When I was younger, I got for a gift, somebody gave me one of the official ones that they bought that had the plaque on there. I still have that one. But my dad and I went down to the grounds, and I was a little kid. And he's like, little kids aren't going to get arrested. So he sent me over there, and I climbed through the fence, and I grabbed a brick. And I still have that brick. I've had it ever since, and I'm going to do a giveaway for it. So one of the listeners is going to get a brick from Old Comiskey Park. And it doesn't have any kind of marking on it, but I pulled it out myself. I can assure you it is from Old Comiskey, and I want to give that away. And I'm going to do my best to see about getting a Wrigley brick for a giveaway as well. So keep listening, and I'm going to do a giveaway with that brick. And thanks for listening, and until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her, you can have her, she's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like number New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes. Bears 31 to -7. The Bears!
Oh, when the Bears go bearing